Thank you for having me here to speak. Congratulations, class of 2018. So it's an honor to be here. It's been a roller coaster ride for me for the last almost 30 years for the web. I'm sure the last 3 or 4 years have been quite a roller coaster ride in different ways for you. You've made it to this point. You have your degree as a result of a lot of hard work. You may have had the help of family, whom you should thank, and I thank. You have the help of all kinds of people who have taught you, whether they're teachers or otherwise. But one way or another, you've managed to fill your heads up with all kinds of deep knowledge and all kinds of skills. Well done. Yes, it's true. You have been privileged. You've been privileged you've been given the time and the space to do this, and by succeeding in getting your degree, then it shows that you've used that wisely. So now, this is what they call in America commencement. This is the beginning of the rest of your life. It awaits you. So I will tell you a little story, a bit of my story, and then some advice. This is traditional on these occasions. I also was lucky in many ways. When I was born, my parents were mathematicians. They'd actually met on the team helping to build the first computer, the Ferranti Mark I, the first commercial computer in the UK. So they brought me up in an era of excitement about all the things you could do with a programmable computer, where the concept of a programmable computer, a Turing machine, was just being defined by Alan Turing, who also worked with them. So in that spirit, they encouraged me as a kid to investigate things, to build things. Lots of Lego, lots of scrap materials, things to play with, always a drawer of things where you would throw them out as recycling. My mom put them in a drawer for me to build things with. So when we were little and we complained of being bored, she'd throw us outside into the garden and tell us to just get on with it. She called it watchful negligence. Let them just get on with whatever they want, so long as they don't actually get into a danger. Otherwise, just let them go on, be creative, make up their own things. So I was lucky to grow up the child of those parents, of mathematicians, of computer scientists before computer science was a thing. And I was also really lucky to grow up at that particular time. So I was born in 1955. I grew up, and at the same time as electronics grew up. So when I was a kid, I went through the process of getting older. So electronics went from electromechanical devices to transistors, to integrated circuits, to microprocessors. And so by the time I got to college, then it was possible for an ordinary person to make themselves their own computer. So I did. And I bought a 6800 microprocessor and made it into my own personal computer. So I rode the wave of that technology. I was a consultant helping companies introduce the new microprocessor technology. I showed them how to take a rack full of the old electronics, rip it out, put in a processor in the middle, connect the processor to all the inputs and outputs, and then program the processor to replace the rack or the logic that had been made in hardware before that. That was an exciting time. CERN, the particle physics lab in Geneva, needed help. They needed help programming stuff. Really exciting, interesting place. They reached out across Europe for people. I read about it, the job, where I was working in England. At first I went across for 6 months as a consultant. Then later in 1980 and 1984 I went back for for a bit longer, nominally for 2 years. And so I was really lucky to go to CERN. If you, even visiting CERN, you should do it. It's a neat place. Working there is very cool too. Working there was great because just the crazy people you met, very bright people coming from all over the world, they come with their ideas, their physics. A lot of it was engineering, a lot of it was now software engineering. They all had their crazy ideas. CERN, being an academic place, it wasn't very good at controlling exactly who brings which sort of computer. People came from universities where they were used to using particular machines, and also they built their hardware, their physics, high-energy physics detector hardware, using particular sorts of processors. So we ended up with a huge variety of different machines. And because we ended up with a huge variety of different machines, that meant that we had an exciting but really complicated world in which to try to contribute. I come just as a software engineer. How can I contribute to this? So I would then have to typically just find people in the coffee area. People would introduce me to other people. You want to connect to that module, then you have to connect. Then you have to see that person. So, in a way, the idea of there must be something better came out of a frustration with that all these different computer systems had important information on them. And the funny thing was, at that point, so in we were talking about 1989, I was at CERN, the internet had actually been invented 20 years beforehand. There was no web, there was no web pages, but there was TCP/IP, there were the cables running mainly across America and just starting to cross into Europe. There was the common code, open source we would call it now, code, that you could pick up on a magnetic tape, which would allow you to put internet software on your computer. And so in principle, the internet was there, and so I'd be in the situation that I really wanted to get at a piece of information on your computer. I had to log into it, use your weird program, even though actually it was connected to the internet. And then I imagined a better way. I'm a physicist by training, physicist generalized. So the World Wide Web was a result of generalization. It was just a question of looking at all of the different systems, looking at all of the different screens, and realizing that you could think about each one as being a hypertext page. Each one just gave you a choice of places to go or maybe a search to type in. So I proposed the web. I was, again, lucky. CERN didn't really have an official way of me doing it. But my boss, Mike Sendell, allowed me to do it as a side project. So when he died, and later we found his wife found the memo which I'd written about it. He died of cancer in the intervening 10 years, but she found written on the corner in his writing on my memo the words vague but exciting. So thank goodness he thought it was exciting, and he didn't think it was exciting but vague, otherwise he might not have let me do it. And he let me do it, thank goodness, as a spare time project. So I was also lucky in a way that I was, in 1989, 20 years after the internet. The internet was invented in 1969, and it was invented as a platform. It was Vint Cerf, the people who invented the internet, did it as a platform, and that meant that there was no center, there was no controlling place. I didn't have to go back to Vint Cerf to ask to build a new protocol on it. That it was, I could just build a web on top of it. It was a permissionless space. I was grateful to that, and so I designed, yes, URLs, HTTP and HTML, as you heard. Those are the specs which drive the web. I could just write the programs, run them on a computer, and those two computers would talk to each other, and I didn't have to talk to anybody else. And so in turn, I've tried to make sure that the web also is an open, permissionless space You don't have to come and ask me to build your new website. You can just go ahead and do it. Be my guest. And any way I let you. So as the word spread, it was hard to teach people how to use it, but it spread from local things to global things. And yes, we started as mentioned, we started the World Wide Web Consortium in 1984, and then later Rosemary and I started the World Wide Web Foundation to make sure that the web serves humanity. As the web grew across the world, one of the interesting things that we found was that it had things on it of all kinds of different scales. It had a few big sites, which had a large readership, many small sites with only a few readers, and anything in between. This curve of a few big ones, closely followed by a few other things. Some of you might remember the fractal curves. These curves were called scale-free. The web was found to be scale-free. People talked about the long tail. The long tail is such that when the people using the system, most of the value was in the middle of the long tail. And that was very, very exciting. People had never seen anything like it. The TV had been dominated just by a few players, but the web was dominated by the middle people. It was dominated by all the crazy people making their own websites about dinosaurs and dominoes and whatever. So, and linking to each other, each other's blogs. So that was a wonderful thing. I'd suggest that when you think about as you're looking forward to your life, that you should think about encouraging the long tail. You should do long taily things in your life. You should spend some of the time up at the popular end doing global things. You should spend some of your time doing local things across all the scales, from 10 to the 11, down to 10 to the 0, 1, across 10 orders of magnitude. Then you can be involved in all of them. What can you do at the global level? So you may find lots of people telling you should make India great. That's an important part of your life. Also make the world great. You can join. Hey, you can fund global organizations like the Web Foundation. You've been lucky enough to be educated in English, and that is going to be a valuable tool in itself. But meanwhile, if you're let's talk about the global level, it would be useful if some of you end up picking up or have already got the other great connect languages like Arabic, Mandarin, Spanish, and French. So travel. Learn to understand different cultures. It's really fun. And also, really importantly, it leaves you less likely to dismiss the opinions of others as misguided, stupid, or crazy. So do things at the international level, at the global level. Do things at the national level. Do things find groups of all different sizes, from the big down to the small, and think about the well-being of your nation, of your planet, of your town, of your state, of different places that you know, maybe places that you know now, or places that later you adopt, or places that later adopt you. Do things down the bottom of the scale. Do things with your family. Those people who've helped you get here this far, your family and friends, the small scale, the small group. Maybe a new family. Hey, you can meet, you can be with whoever you want. It's 2018. There's a choice. You don't have to have children. You don't have to get together with another person, but you can, and when you do, it's your choice who they are. So on that small level, so that's a big responsibility. Be sensible about it. And don't forget the smallest scale, the scale of 1, 10 to the power 0 for the mathematicians, the scale of 1. Always look after yourself. The other things you need, the other things that you're doing in your life need you to be healthy and strong. So learn to understand how much time you need to be in your own company, thinking over things subconsciously. Never cheat yourself out of that time, no matter what things you get involved in. There will be times in your life when the normal day-to-day processing of deciding what to do fails you. And you end up with this big decision you have to make. And you have to fall back on other things, more basic, more fundamental things. All right, we've already had lots of talk about values. And so, yeah, values. You should fall back on your values. And in fact, you should use certain important values which are important for humanity. Things like you must absolutely respect every human being in the world, regardless of their race, color, or gender, or sexual preference, regardless of their abilities or disabilities. And you must make your websites so that people with a disability can use them as well as you can. If you have a natural respect for those people, those amazing people who can do things that you feel you can't do, like incredible leaders and superstars, then you should also respect the people who do the things you'd rather not do, like work on the garbage trucks. They also need just the same respect. Be skeptical of all religion. Use your reason and science to determine what to believe in. Use logic and democracy to decide what to do. Think about the planet. There was a bumper sticker that said that if everybody in America was vegan just half the time, just half the people in America were vegan half of the time, it would have a huge effect, save the water corresponding to Colorado rivers. So just you don't have to be crazy, but just incorporating a thinking about the planet into day-to-day is a good idea. I have to include that in the list. Well, compared to when I graduated from university, things are massively different for you. Change happens a lot faster. The web could spread in 1989 across the internet, which had been deployed when I was a kid, but that had been deployed mainly across US universities, and the internet was deployed by shipping magnetic tapes with the code through by truck. So now your projects deploy across the web overnight. Overnight, things change. Overnight, a new technology can spread. Overnight, a new meme, a new idea can spread. Potentially damaging, viral new ideas can spread. Possibly new cultural revolutions can happen in this new connected world. Society can now change fast, not just technology. The problems of climate change are really serious. The promise of curing cancer and curing neurological diseases is tantalizing. And these challenges can only be solved with massive collaboration. That means using the web, but not just using the web, building really new cool tools to do it. Collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. Go get online and find people to collaborate with. You will need to use technology and to build technology. Winston Churchill said, "We shape our buildings, thereafter they shape us." That is even more true of technology. We shape technology, but thereafter, it shapes us. Our technology has shaped our democracy and our culture. Be aware that you are not just interacting with people, you're interacting through a system which has been programmed, and you're reacting in a way that's in particular ways, because the system has been programmed to produce particular reaction in you. Sometimes, for some systems, in order to try to lead you down a path towards truth and reality, some systems to try to have a good reaction, other systems are programmed to try to get you to engage, which might mean be angry. Those systems might end up getting more ad revenue if you become really angry, and so feeding you fake information may get you that angry. So be careful when you use. Be aware that when you use social network online technology, that it is manipulating you. So build new social media which respects users. Build new social media which creates space for constructive discussion. Don't try to make a machine that filters out untruth. Try to make a machine which allows people to collaborate, to support the elucidation between them of truth, which supports science, the process of science, the process of experiment, review, the process of democracy, of sharing of ideas, of challenging ideas, of voting on deciding between us, collaborative, the one we're committing to. Remember that the websites you see on the web now are just the websites of the moment. The systems that you build next will be the next wave. So, and as you build those systems, if you've spent 99% of your life using the web, you should also please spend 1% of it fighting to keep it open and free. Fight for net neutrality. Fight for privacy and free expression. Keep it one web, free of blocking and spying. Fight for science. Fight for democracy. Congratulations, graduates of the Shiv Nadar University. Go out and do great things.